What's going on, guys? Daru Strong Podcast. Phil Daru, I'm your host. Episode number 20. I am here in Tampa, Florida at MI40 Nation with my guy, Ben Pakulski. So we talked a lot about different topics, especially in the world of hypertrophy, muscle building, but also went a little bit more in tune with metaphysics, with understanding your body, with understanding where you need to be at all times, and also mental clarity. So again, this is a great conversation I had with him. I'm actually going to go ahead and get a workout in with him, so make sure you go check that out on my YouTube channel. Again, I have to shout out the sponsors, ReviveSups.com. Go there, check out my very own athlete stack. You can get it now for 20% off. Just check out the discount code Daru Strong 20. Also, make sure you check out my mentorship course if you haven't already done so. I go through all of my methodologies, all of my principles of training, and you get it forever. So again, if you sign up, you get access to the portal and you get all my information. Also, we go on a Q&A call together every other week, so you guys can connect with me on that level, and I'll see you there every other weekend. So make sure you check it out in the link in the description. Now, let's get on to the podcast. So Ben, thanks a lot for having me, brother. I appreciate you.
Dude,
right,
it's great to have you in the palace.
Yeah, man, it's a great facility. Hopefully, after this, I'll go and get some training in, and we'll figure it out.
You gotta light something up, right?
Exactly.
Wouldn't be right if you came to the palace and didn't do a workout.
For sure, man. So, okay, so let's start off, and I got a lot of MMA-based fighters, also coaches that watch and listen to the podcast. Give them a little bit of a rundown just on how you started in the industry. I know you're a professional bodybuilder and now grew your business and a brand to a world-renowned brand. How'd you get started in doing this?
Sometimes there's this external perception of bodybuilding being very different than MMA, but oftentimes there's a lot of parallels, man, because a lot of us grew up with pain, a lot of us grew up with fear, and that kind of leads you down the path of like, I'm gonna do something extreme. So I did a little bit of Muay Thai when I was a teenager, as I mentioned, and didn't really pursue it, but bodybuilding, for whatever reason, just allowed me to challenge myself to the highest level that I knew how. And I grew up in a family of overweight alcoholics and drug addicts, and for me, there's a huge amount of pain associated with being out of shape or ever drinking. So as soon as I found something that felt healthy to me, I just attached to it. Like, I remember probably within 6 months of training, I was hooked. Like, I was going twice a day before school, after school, quit football because I was like, forget it, it's gonna interfere with my training. Yeah. I just loved it, and I wasn't good at it, right? People like, oh, were you genetically blessed? Man, the story is I was 16 years old, maybe 15, and I remember like all of my buddies being able to curl like the 17-pound dumbbells, and I couldn't even do the 12s. And it's like, that shows you, like, I had no muscle. I was an endurance runner. I was a vegetarian for a while. Did a bunch of dumb stuff that I was told was healthy. So once I realized, hey man, that may not be healthy, I started to pursue this, kind of bodybuilder lifestyle. And I was very blessed to have a dad who, as soon as I said, hey dad, I'm interested in this, he's like, well, let's go to the Olympia. Let's go see the best. And I was hooked at that point. I was 17 years old. I went to the Olympia in New York in '98. And at that point, man, there was nothing else in my mind, and there was no way I wasn't going to do it, right? There was no way I wasn't going to get there. I was going to do whatever it took. And I didn't have the genetics everyone else did. I didn't, I was in Canada, so obviously it's a different perspective, because usually you have this belief that, oh, you got to be in the US, you got to be in Venice, you got to be in California, because that's the paradigm. So it was definitely a lot of uphill battles against a lot of what I believed to be obstacles at the time. But looking back on it, man, it was my greatest opportunity, because it forced me to have to become better at everything than anyone, right? It wasn't just, there was no genetics. It wasn't just like, I'm gonna go in the gym and build muscle. It's like, how the hell am I gonna do this correctly? So I started seeking out the best mentors and coaches and educators, and I went to school for it. So that was kind of how it started, man. It was just an obsession, and I was neurotically obsessed with what I was doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I have been able to work with some of the highest level athletes in the world, and they all say the same things. And that shows that you were able to take it to the next level because of your work ethic, because of that mind frame that you had. Now, you said your dad really, took to you going and doing bodybuilding. How did that help you and guide you to where you're at now, as far as, just having that security there, that he was there to help you?
Well, so him and I had zero relationship when I was a kid. So I guess his attempt at bonding with me was like, yeah, let's go do this Olympia thing. And so I think when I was a kid, now that I'm a dad, I kind of get it. Like, when you're a kid when you're a dad and your kid wants to do something else that you don't know about and you don't like, you're kind of like, well, he's little. I'm sure he was busy working, whatever he was doing. So we just didn't have any relationship. We never talked, barely saw him. The only time I did see him was just like, hey, here's some money, go buy yourself something. And That was the extent of it. So when he found something that he could support, it was useful. And then honestly, probably my biggest supporter throughout my career, man. So like you say, it was super helpful to have somebody, even though him and I didn't have a good father-son relationship, it was still someone I was trying to show that I was good enough to, right? So a lot of times when you're a kid, or when I was a kid anyways, it was always trying to show dad I was good enough, right? He was always talking down to me, like so many stories, but I always wanted to, you know, kind of stick two middle fingers up and say, look, I'm going to do this. Okay. And that was kind of a big driving force, along with, you know, everyone else along the way who was a hater and said I couldn't do it, right?
I'm sure, plenty of them. And that kind of helped you develop the systems and methodologies that you use to be so successful in bodybuilding and what you're doing now, correct?
Well, trial and error, man. I think the fact that I wasn't gifted at building muscle, I trained more often than everybody else. I trained more volume than anybody else because I just had to discover what worked. And, you know, I read every book that I could get my hands on. I went to school for 4 years in university to learn the stuff, and took every course I could after university, hired as many different coaches as I could, learned as much as I could. And it was just, you know, finding the right mentors and coaches throughout the way that allowed me to like carve that path. And to be honest, what I realized was nobody had the answer. And that's important for the listener to understand, is there's not always one person that has all the answers for you. And even if there was one person, I highly suggest everybody start to learn to empower themselves by making their own decisions, right? Every time you hand the authority to somebody else, you're losing the opportunity to grow yourself. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a coach. You should have a coach, but you should be able to be involved in the decision-making process. You should be involved in the thought process. Because you got to learn, man. If you the entire career, if you have someone else doing it, you never learn. You never question anything. You never grow. So I think it's a huge opportunity, especially for young athletes, to go, well, you know, I want to understand why we're doing this. I'm like going to someone like yourself and going, hey, Phil, I want to be part of your mentorship because I want to understand not just how to do it. Like, don't just tell me, give me a program and say, go and do it. I want to, like, tell me why we're doing this, why we're doing that there, and why is this better for me and that's better for them. And, you know, asking better questions is probably why I've been able to succeed in everything I've done, is because, you know, I had a great mentor early in my life who said, man, challenge everything you think you know. So when you think you know something, you're now stuck in this opportunity. You can't grow. If I think I have something figured out, my brain shuts off and goes, I have this. So there's no growth that exists there. So he says, challenge everything you think you know. And because the second you start to do that, your mind starts to open up, because you start to look at it in different angles, because this thing that may be true in this one scenario may not work in this other scenario. So you start to open up your mind to possibilities.
Now, I know that you're not a man that kind of married to one specific methodology of training. I know you more so figure out what works for that individual and go from there. Now, going into your own career, and we'll talk about your, you know, what you have now, what was the biggest thing that helped you along the way get to where you're at, as far as from a bodybuilding standpoint? Because building hypertrophy, building muscle, you know, having that physique that everybody wants to have in a sense, right? How were you able to overcome your obstacles of, you know, the person that doesn't have the genetics that, you know, a Phil Heath had or something like that?
I think it was just the belief that I wasn't going to stop until I got there. And I knew there was a way. I knew I would find a way, or I would create one. And that, so the greatest blessing I had was all of the obstacles, right? It was all the people that said you can't. It was all the injuries I had. It was all the times when I was like struggling and hitting my head against the wall because I couldn't build a certain body part. I'm like, man, I just won't accept no as an answer. I'm like, I have to figure this out. And somebody said to me, you know, if you can build one muscle, you can build them all. And whether or not that's true, it really resonated with me. And I was like, okay, like if I can build this much muscle on my legs and shoulders and chest, why the hell can't I build these other body parts? Because the same internal environment, right? Same internal chemistry, same internal muscle fiber composition. So, you know, short of like the muscle belly length being different, it's the same thing. So that really inspired me to go, okay, well, I can figure this out. And I was just lucky because I was looking, because I wasn't closed off and thought I knew everything, because I was looking for the answers, the mentors and the guides appeared, right? Gotcha. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
For sure. So let's go a little bit further now, right? Now, how many years did you bodybuild professionally?
7 professionally. Yeah, it was like 8, I guess. So I got my card in 2008, and I retired officially in 2016.
And what was your like major reasoning for just stopping?
Well, so when I first started bodybuilding at 17, I had a plan to get my pro card by 25. I wanted to win the Olympia by 30. So that was my original plan. And I was going to retire at 35. That was my plan from like literally the time I was 17. I'm like, because I knew in the back of my mind that bodybuilding is just not healthy. Like if you're going to do this at the highest level, you're definitely taking years off your life. And I knew that. So I made a commitment to myself to retire by 35. which I did. But there's a lot of reasons, man. So, when I was 30, my intention, I was kind of positioning myself from the time I was 30 to start really pushing for the Olympia. Like at that point, I hadn't really pushed anything, the extraneous things bodybuilders do. I hadn't really pushed anything really, really hard. And I was ready to I gave myself this 5-year window where I'm like, all right, you're top 10 in the world now. Let's go. Let's drop the hammer and go. And I was extremely blessed in 2012 when I was literally 30, 31 to have my first child. And that shifted my values and my priorities. So rather than being the most selfish person in the world who went through life with blinders on, I could only see that tunnel vision of Mr. Olympia. I now saw I have to take care of this little human. But even with the first one, because it was a son, I was like, man, we're just going to be buddies. We're going to be training partners. You're going to come with me. And I was like, we're good. And then, God blessed me again a year later with the daughter. And that changed it, man. That changed it for me. Like both of them were definitely kind of just, the first one was a nudge and the second one was a kick over the edge. I was like, I just can't be the same person, man. I was competing. I was pretty ruthless. Like I had a reputation for being so focused that I just wasn't always nice to people. I was never mean, but I was never thoughtful.
Yeah, sure.
So if you're getting in my way, I'm going to tell you you're getting in my way. Like I got a job to do, man.
For sure.
So I realized when I had a daughter, I couldn't be that person anymore. I couldn't go home and be this nice, caring, loving dad and go to the gym and be a ruthless animal. Like it just didn't work in my brain. It was very hard for me. So I started to almost started to blend the two. And I was like, well, at the gym, I'm not really doing the same, the focused savagery kind of thing. And at home, I'm kind of not being the dad I want to be. So I was like, man, I just don't have the same purpose anymore. To be that committed at that high level, you have to be completely purpose driven. You need to, why I'm doing it. Why am I getting up every day at 4 o'clock? Why am I training 3 times a day? And I just didn't have it anymore because I think my new purpose became being a great dad.
True. Yeah, I think making it to the highest level, you need to be selfish.
1,000%. 1,000%.
So it's funny because I ended up retiring from the sport of MMA at the age of 26, and that was right around the time when my son was born. Mm-hmm. And so I was thinking to myself, well, I can't continue to be a business owner, be a coach, and also be a professional athlete at the same time. Yep. On top of being a father and being a husband. Yep. So I get that 100%, man. And that's a testament to you as a person.
Right. And even I was doing okay as a bodybuilder. I was making decent money, but you realize, so I had a blessing that happened early in my career where I had a sponsorship that was paying me really good money. And I signed a 2-year contract with them, and I was stoked. I was like, man, I'm set. I can focus now. It was 4 months into the contract. They called me up and go, hey, man, can't pay you anymore. Wow. We don't have the sales. So they just go, done. So rather than making $100,000 a year, whatever the hell it was at the time, I go to making 0. And I was like, okay, if that happens when I have a child, that's a completely different ballgame. So literally the second my son was born, or I found out he was going to be born, I started a business. That's how I started this. It's like I built it out of necessity. I sat down and wrote a 220-page book in 3 weeks. I didn't get out of a chair for effectively 12 hours a day. It was a lot of coffee and a lot of late nights, but wrote a book, and that became the premise of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I remember Bill Gates sat in the hotel room and wrote the entire Microsoft layout, and he just kind of focused in. That kind of reminds me of what you just did.
You have to, man. At the end of the day, deep thought is everything. Like, your ability to succeed in life is completely governed by your ability to think deeply. And so most people in today's society, I think intentionally curated is you have to be distracted. Like it's like the squirrel brain, right? Where you're always looking for a nut. And man, if you can't focus, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to have a great business. You're not going to have a great relationship. You're not going to have a great relationship with yourself. So that was, I'm aiming now to make that one of my superpowers. It's like, I want to be able to sit down and go so deep into my thought and so deep into my focus that it allows you to think like a chess master, right? So average person is thinking one chess piece ahead or one move ahead. I want to think 6 moves ahead. And that's always the goal. So it's, it's the daily meditation. It's the daily slowing down the mind. It's the yoga stuff I'm doing now, because I think that may be the greatest superpower that exists in the world. It's yes, strength is great. Yes, being fast is great. Yes, fighting is great. But like, if I can think at a level that's 3 steps ahead of everybody else, again, you win.
Yeah, the clarity is there. I feel like their vision, is just solely catered to the end goal.
Right.
And that's very important. Now, getting to the business side, because you obviously have a successful business, did you have any business background or any type of mindset, or were you just kind of just like, all right, I'm going to open up this brand and see what happens?
Man, to give my dad credit again, like all I saw when I was a kid was he was a hustler. Mm-hmm. And we won't get into details as to what he was doing, but he was a hustler. And he never stopped. And as much as I resented the fact that he wasn't there as a kid, looking back on it, it was a huge blessing for me to watch. Like, he just knew how to make money. He just was like making money, and that was the only entrepreneurship that I was exposed to, man. It's entrepreneurship by fire. Like, if he could find a way to make $1,000, he's going to go make that $1,000. And it wasn't working at a $10 an hour job, or like he was a hustler. So that was really how I learned, man. And I didn't have any schooling in it. I just had a huge interest in it. I remember right out of university, actually, I got a pharmaceutical sales job, and I think I had this intuitive ability to be a salesman, just because it was always sincere. Like, if I didn't believe in the product, I couldn't sell it. Yeah. But if I believed in it, I could go, well, this is how it's going to benefit you. I'm like, oh, okay, people got that. So that maybe was a little bit of experience. I sold supplements. I had a pharmaceutical sales job, and that maybe was a little experience. But as far as like actually how to run a business, I still don't think I'm good at running a business. So I'm good at creating content. Yeah. I'm a terrible manager. Like, I'm an introvert, believe it or not, and I just managing people is not my thing.
You know what's funny is that I do know a lot of people that put content out online and are out there in the industry that are introverts. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that you need a little bit of both.
You need to be able to. You could turn it on.
Exactly.
I can absolutely turn it on when I need to, but if I had my choice, I'm just like, again, the guy who spends 12 hours a day at his computer writing his book is probably not an extrovert, right? Yeah. Sitting down by myself and just hammering it. I can do that all day. But although I do love high quality people, and I always say that, it's like, there's assholes in every culture, there's assholes in every race, and there's also amazing people in every culture and every race. And I just try to associate myself with amazing people who give me energy, who inspire me. And that's my tribe, man. And I invest daily in my tribe, right? I have a very small group of people, and I try to make sure I keep in contact with them as often as I can, because I think it's important to, in this society, we're trying to go, a mile wide and an inch deep with our relationships. Everyone's like, I want to have 1 million followers on social media, but I have no good friendships and good relationships, right? So I'm focusing now on going the opposite direction. Like, I don't spend any time on social media. Whereas I'll invest time in my best friends or my team or the people that I love most.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people talk about balance, right? And do you believe in that, or do you feel like it's kind of?
I think it's a cyclical thing, and that's kind of my new belief. Is it's priorities, right? Like, right now, if I have a priority to do this, I'm doing a mentorship very much like you are, and I'm writing a personal training course. Well, that's my priority. So 6 hours a day, you'll find me doing that, right? And that's what I prioritize. Whereas as soon as that's done, I'm going to switch priorities and do something else. So if you know what you value in life, right? So there's one of the most important things that I've ever done is determine what I value. So going through a list of the top 5 to 10 things that, like, these are my highest values, and in what order, it allows you to make decisions, right? So when I left bodybuilding was no longer my highest value. Like, now my highest value is my family. So, okay, when I need to remove that top value and prioritize time and energy on the family. So literally the values dictate the order of time and energy. So now, currently, my top value is, hey, I'm building my business, or, maybe my family's top, and my second one's building my business. My fitness is third, and, it's always in that order. So if it comes down to making a decision, like, should I invest this next 2 hours in business or family? I know which one the answer is. It's not enough to fight with myself. I already know, like, boom. And the question that I asked myself is, if, and I said this when I was competing in Olympia, I said, if I was to become Mr. Olympia, because I truly believed I could have at least come close. If I win the Olympia and my kids say I'm a piece of shit, is it worth it? What do you think the answer is? Absolutely not. Like, no question. So I was like, you know what? No amount of work or time is going to be worth it. Like, because that's the pinnacle. And I was close enough where I was in striking distance. Whether or not you win is always subjective, but I was like, it's just not worth it to me. So I gave up. I was like, you know what? If I can't commit 100%, I'm out. And it's the same in business. It's like, if I make $30 million in the next 5 years and my kids think I'm an asshole, is it worth it to me? You're like, well, I want them to have a great life, but more importantly, I want them to know I'm there for them and I love them. So you're balancing out. Maybe I'll make 10 million and I'll still be a great dad. You have to go, like, how far can I push with this one and not let this one fall behind?
Yeah, that's very commendable, because a lot of people go the extreme on that route,
Sure.
And then they have no relationship with their kids, no relationship with their wife. Right. Or husband, or
man, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the reason I'll say that is because they just don't value it. Like, I value family, I value my children, but if they don't, I get it. Like, I'm not gonna condemn you for your values, man. Like,
it's what you want to do, then do it.
Yeah. And I realized that with kids, like, they're on their own journey too, man. I don't know what your child was like. My childhood was like what it was, and we all have our journey, man. And we're all learning lessons, and it's all subject to our interpretation of the lessons, which is another complex thing to talk about. But we're all on our journey, and again, those kids are going to turn out great. based on their perception and their decisions they make, or not, right? And I think a lot of parents like to take responsibility for their kids' lives. And although you are a huge influence, there's a lot, man, I'll tell you, I have 2 kids, and you get this being a dad. You can walk into a room and say one thing, and all 3 of those kids are going to interpret that differently. Mm-hmm. And like one could be like, oh, that was awesome, my dad's so great. One could be like, oh, my dad's an asshole. And you're like, you said the exact same thing the exact same way, and they all heard it, right? But they all hear it differently based on their energy at the time, their attitude at the time, the context, what they're applying it to. And so it's not just what you say, it's how they interpret it. And I think that's so important, man. So again, a bit of a tangent around, priorities and values, but I'm never going to condemn someone for living their bliss and finding their highest value.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about interpretation. Do you believe in, just kind of measuring out different personality types and then being able to communicate that based off of the personality that you're working with?
I think that would be ideal, but I think it's so complex. I know there's all these personality assessment scores and such, and man, it gives you a vague idea. Yeah, but it's like reading a horoscope. You're like, yeah, that's kind of right, but that all that other stuff is bullshit. Yeah. So you're like, I don't know. So I don't know. I think we're too new into the attempt to understand people's personalities, because there's not just the nature implications, right? There's not just like, hey, this is the neurochemistry and this is the neurobiology. There's also the history, and there's also the perception of things, and there's also the influence of the media and like what country you're from and what your beliefs are. There's so many layers. So I think, pigeonholing people into 4 different personality types is just ridiculous.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, from a baseline perspective, I would look at it as, okay, here's an understanding to a degree, and now I need to talk to you. I need to communicate with you. I need to work with you, and then we can figure out a relationship and how I could communicate with that individual. As a coach, for me, that does help.
Sure.
Because of what I do, and Ben, you know this now, like I work with a large amount of MMA fighters, boxers, and they all have different personalities, but they're all fighters.
Right.
And it's funny because they all come from different backgrounds and different areas in the world, but I feel that if you don't understand the individual, you cannot coach them, you cannot talk to them in the right way.
And that's the same for any personal trainer, right? Is the first thing I say to a coach who I'm mentoring coaches now is like, you got to create very, very clear expectations. Mm-hmm. So if I'm getting into a relationship with a woman, she needs to know what she can expect from me, and I need to know what I can expect from her. And anytime there's mismanaged communication or expectations, the relationship's always going to fail. Like if I expect this and this and this of a woman and she doesn't do that, well, I'm going to have resentment and hostility toward her because she's not meeting my expectations. It's the same thing in any relationship, right? So if you get in a relationship with an MMA fighter, it's ultimately a relationship. And you're like, hey, man, what do you expect from a coach? How do I need to show up for you? What do I need to do to be my best? What do I need to do for you to be your best? You're looking at all those things, like knowing what they perceive to be a great workout, knowing what they perceive to be a great dynamic relationship before and after. Like, what environment do they want? What music do they want? Like, you need to know all those things, because that's how you manage somebody's expectations. And if you can manage them, you can deliver exactly what they expect and exactly what they want.
Yeah, it's funny because when I walked into the gym, you asked me what kind of music do I want. I don't get that a whole lot, so that was good to know. But so all right, so now getting into the business side of it, we talked about you opening up the gym. What are you doing now? As opposed, like I know you have your mentorship. Yeah, we're doing that, and then also the YouTube channel, podcast. Yeah, all that, right?
So I think a lot of my obstacles and challenges as a bodybuilder has now evolved into who I am as a person, and I really want to help anyone who's attempting to build a physique to start to understand this stuff. And there's so many mistakes I've made, and that includes what I do in the gym, that includes what I do outside of the gym. So really, if I was to kind of sum up what I'm doing now in, at least at this exact moment in my life, is healthy, intelligent muscle building. Because when I did it, it was muscle building, and it was maybe hardcore muscle building. And I was like, man, if I could build maximum amount of muscle and still do it in a healthy way, that would be the ideal scenario. And so my objective is like, how do we maximize every tiny little variable? As I said before we started this chat, like I'm looking to push the envelope to the extreme, but I don't want to do it in a way that's going to hurt anybody. Like I want to do it in ways that are safe. And that there's so many levels to that, right? And a lot of it looks at genetics, a lot of it looks at metabolic pathways, a lot of it looks at the nervous system and the brain and interpretation and identity and beliefs, and so many complex avenues that need to be explored to optimize someone's performance and their experience and their ability to build muscle. And those are all the levels that I'm trying to look at now to help somebody at any level understand it, all the while improving their relationship with themselves, because I think that's a missing piece, man. Everyone's like, oh, just work harder. I'm like, no, man. Like, if you go home and you have anger and resentment toward yourself, you're gonna have anger and resentment toward everyone in your life, because it's impossible to be happy if you're not happy with yourself. So again, I'm really doing. You realize as a coach, 80% of it's being a psychologist, being a therapist. And again, I'm not certainly a psychologist or a therapist, but it's always just guiding people to the right resources, guiding them to the right books, asking better questions. I never give advice, right? I always ask questions, because you realize that you could tell someone the earth is round all day, and unless you show them it's round, or unless they learn that themselves, they're going to think it's flat. So rather than saying, hey, this is the way it is, you idiot, I'm like, no, like, I'll ask better questions. So I'm always trying to let them come to their own self-discovery, because that's a much more powerful way to change somebody's mind and their belief than just telling them the way it is. And I think that's a huge issue in social media now, is people are coming out with very concrete statements. Like, hey, this is the way it is, this is the way it's always been, you got to do it this way. And I'm like, well, no, like, I want you to decide why we're doing it that way and what the best is for you. And then you're empowering yourself, right? Rather than just ultimately having somebody tell you what to do, and you're ultimately becoming a monkey. It's monkey see, monkey do. You can actually become a empowered person.
You're empowering individuals to do what they need to do.
Man, isn't that the ideal scenario, right? It's like, any client, any coach, I want you to do this shit yourself. Like, I don't want you to be dependent on me.
For sure,
yeah.
100%, yeah. I think people get caught up in that, because I get a lot of my coaches too. They ask me like, well, what should I do here? Well, what do you think you should do here?
Right.
Based on the information that's been given, based on the knowledge that you've attained, and then based on the research, you can come up with your own hypothesis on what can happen.
Thought process. That's it. And it could be wrong, but it doesn't matter. At least you're thinking, right? And everyone's thinking on the surface. I want you to go 3 levels deep. Think deeper. Why is that the case? That's the question I ask everybody. Tell me why that's like that. Tell me why that's like that. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's a good thought process. Did you think about this? No, I didn't think about that. It's asking deeper levels of thought.
It's like playing chess, not checkers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So that's incredible. So I got some questions here, but first, I did want to talk a little bit about, I know this is broad and everybody's different, and people ask me this all the time, and I'm like, it depends. But what is the best possible way? I know a lot of people are listening, they want to build muscle.
Yeah.
What can we do, also from the nutritional side, because I know that plays a big part in it.
Right.
What can we do to maximize our hypertrophy in any muscle group that we're looking to enhance?
Well, I'll tell you what, man. So if you go to any other, no, I wouldn't say any other, but many typical personal trainers or coaches, they're going to say, you got to work hard. You got to do more volume. You got to do more frequency. Now, your son's 5. Does he play an instrument?
He's going to play the piano.
Okay. So has he ever played the piano before?
No.
Okay, so if you put him in front of a piano, and you say, what's your son's name?
Leo.
Leo. You say, Leo, play the piano. He's gonna take his hand and he's gonna start slapping the keys, right? He's not gonna go, or maybe he'll go 1 key at a time, right, with 1 finger, or he's go like, depending on all the the younger kids will go all their whole hand. Some will go 1 finger, and he's gonna make this very loud, this very non-specific sound. He's gonna make this booming, boom, boom, boom. So his nervous system hasn't learned how to coordinate fingers yet, right? So whereas if you go to a concert level pianist, they can now, not only can they individually use each finger, they can determine exactly how much pressure each finger is using. So they've gone through probably 10 years plus of learning the skill of individually, at the level of the brain, individually orchestrating each of these fingers to move independently, and to be able to be so fine with how much they push each key that they can create music. So, well, how does that apply to exercise? When people go into the gym, most people never go through a phase of learning a skill. So they go in the gym and they're like, a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old kid, and they just start moving things. They just start moving them fast. And they hope that if we just keep banging on these keys, that eventually I'm going to make beautiful music. I'm going to have this physique that makes sense. Well, rather than going through a time where, like, if you learn how to play the piano, your instructor, if they're a good instructor, is going to go, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play this 1 note. Let's learn that. And then maybe we're going to learn how to play 2 notes. And it's usually 1 to 2 fingers at a time. Yeah. But slowly, we're going to build up the skill set. And over time, and it may take you a year, maybe take you 5, depending how diligent you are with your practice, over time, you're going to be able to individually play those fingers. And that's what people miss in exercise. Like, so everyone's programming more volume, more work, more load, all this shit. Like, well, how about learning how to fucking play the piano first, right? Like, let's learn how to use these muscles first. Because your nervous system, when you're born with trillions of neurons in your brain, and all of them just literally work in unison. They all just work together. So you have to cleave them and create precise movements, which takes time. It's literally redirecting the nervous system. So orchestrating the brain to just be specific in movements. So if people could learn to be more specific in movements, even for a short amount of time, like if you want to play the piano and you took 5 lessons, you'd be significantly better than if you took none, right? If you took 10 lessons, you'd be exponentially better than if you took none. So learning like precision of movement, in my eyes, is the greatest way to ultimately, to use the metaphor, to create music, to be able to go in the gym and do shit without hurting yourself, and be able to do things that are not just arbitrary. It's like, oh, I'm actually contracting this right muscle in through the range that it's meant to be challenged through it, right? So if I'm playing sports, you're gonna learn the skill of the sport. If I'm gonna learn to play golf, I want to learn a golf swing. I'm not just gonna go in and work harder and faster and more often. So learning the skill, to summarize, of exercise is, I think, the missing link for most people. And again, some people don't want to learn the skill. I just want to work hard and I just want to be kind of in shape. If you just kind of want to be in shape, that's fine. If you just want to work hard, that's fine. But if you actually want to build a healthy, well-developed physique, you got to learn the skills. Because why do I say healthy? Because if you just keep doing the thing over and over and over again, eventually you develop wear patterns, you develop compensation patterns. Like one muscle gets really strong, one gets really weak. So you got to learn how to differentiate movements. And that's just this precision of movement thing, right? It's like, I got to learn how to use all of these different joints and all of these different muscles in every way that they're capable of going to be able to have balanced joint forces, right? So if I have one side of my joint that's really developed and the other side is not developed, just because I've had these general movements, I'm going to have injuries. So I think that's a big missing piece, man. I think people don't understand the necessity of learning a skill. And honestly, my suggestion is 1 to 2 exercises per body part. Become a master of those 1 to 2 exercises. And like, which ones do they matter? Sure, but even less than that. Like, just be specific. So when people say, hey, Phil, how many exercises do you for chest? The answer is whichever ones you can do really well. Spend more time on that. And people say, well, you need variety. Okay. Well, how about rep ranges? So, if we do chest Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we can do 4 to 6 on Monday, 8 to 12 on Wednesday, and 15 to 20 on Friday. And you could get completely different stimulus at the level of the muscle. And so it's a novel stimulus, and you're getting the ability to learn that skill over and over and over again, because obviously repetition is the mother of skill.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of information like that out there.
No.
And when it comes to bodybuilding, a lot of these guys, like the big meatheads in the world, just kind of get after it.
Yeah, eat more food, lift more weight. And I get it. And some people, a very small percentage of people, that works for. LeBron James. LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world, because when he picked up a basketball and he went and shot it in the hoop, his brain and his nervous system got it, right? He had this amazing genetic predisposition to that sport. Not everyone was LeBron James. So if you want to become a professional basketball player, I'd suggest you learn how to dribble the ball before you go play with LeBron James.
Yeah, those intricate details, but simplicity of the movement first.
Yep.
Right. And having
slow,
that baseline.
Methodical. Yeah, man. If someone wants to learn, I don't know, how to throw a right jab or a left jab, like, hey man, just go do more. Yeah. No, you're gonna develop bad patterns. You're gonna end up hurting yourself, right?
Yeah, you gotta slow down the movement. That's what we always preach upon, is that you want to be able to move slow, then move fast.
Yeah. If you can't do it slowly, you certainly can't do it fast.
For sure. Yeah. With that's very interesting, because now, I hope a lot of people can get something out of that. I definitely will start to integrate that more in. That's intramuscular, intermuscular coordination. That's understanding different positions to help hit the muscle correctly.
Right.
Because I've seen you do a lot where you just change just the foot placement, or change the, just the body in general to hit a certain muscle.
It's often just getting the body out of its own way, right? Some people have limited range of motion. Why does limited range of motion happen, right? It's just weakness. It's instability is a sign of weakness. So, sometimes it's just, I'm trying to get the greatest range of motion that they can control. So a slight little tweak or a slight little change in body position just opens everything up, and like, gosh, I've never felt like this before. And I'm like, man, muscle building is so easy. It's so simple. But the reason that people can't do it, or quote unquote can't do it, is because they think they know what they're doing. And my quote that I say, too often is like, forget what you think you know, and think, right? So like, you actually have to stop and go, what am I actually doing here? What's actually working? Where's the tension? Can I feel tension? If I can't, guess what? You're doing it wrong, right? So yeah, there's little intricacies, especially at a higher, like in a beginner, intricacies don't matter, right? Like I'm sure in boxing the same way, just throw the punch. But as you get to the highest level, like if you're Tiger Woods playing golf, that little intricate change in your swing, or that little like change in their finger position matters. And that's, the higher level you get, the more those little intricate details matter. Or maybe conversely, the better result you're trying to get. Like if you want to have a great physique with a balanced development, then you're really going to have to pay attention to details.
Yeah, that's very true. And I feel like that's where it's at. When you get to the highest level, you need to figure out the details first.
Yeah, and that was my blessing, man. And I had the hardest time with certain things because I was following other people's paradigm. When I first learned to train correctly, I had gained an appreciable amount of muscle just with hard work. So it was very hard for my ego ultimately to go, well, I'm gonna realize all the shit I've been doing for the last 7 years is wrong, or at least very not done correctly, and I can make it significantly better. And it was very hard for my ego to do that because it's part of my identity, right? I've built this 7 years of muscle. I built a good amount of muscle, and everyone thinks I'm the best bodybuilder in the country or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I have to admit to myself and to everyone else that the things I've been doing for the last 7 years is wrong, or at least not optimal. That's a challenge, man. That's a challenge for a lot of people. It's like trying to convince someone the earth is round when they think it's flat. Like, no, man, I know it's round, or I know it's flat because, you know, if you go to the end of it, you're gonna fall off. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna guide you to the end of the earth, and when you don't fall off, you can come back and go, oh, thank you, right? And that's really what I'm doing in muscle building, because you can't convince somebody that all the shit they've been doing for the last 5 and 10 years is incorrect until you show them. And like, you can bring it, that's why I say, man, I don't try to convince anybody to train the way I train. I'm like, don't, that's fine. But when you get an injury, or when you can't train a body part, when you can't build a body part, you have a weak body part, just come and see me and I'm here. I'm not gonna shove it down your throat. If you want, I'm here to help.
Yeah, I feel like that's, you know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks type mentality. You don't want to have that, you know. I had a lot of veteran fighters that were set in their ways when they first came to me, and it took them a little bit of time, and then I got to show them
build
the
trust.
right way.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, if any of you guys out there that are at the level that this man was at and still need some help, definitely come check him out.
But yeah, even lower level, right? Like my target is to help as many people as I can, and that's why I've got programs and stuff, and I get tons of videos, as you know. And it's not always the same cue, right? Like what would work for you won't work for everybody else, and that's I think the beauty of it is, like, it's the story of the Boilermaker, right? And I won't say the story, but if anyone wants to look up the fable of the Boilermaker, it's just this idea of knowing where to tap, right? So there's a great fable of the Boilermaker, and he just, you know, he walks in and taps the engine turns on after everyone's been trying to fix it for, you know, days and weeks. He just goes, oh yeah, like it's just knowing where to look, right? And that's that. I don't claim to be better than anyone else. It's just I've done this shit enough times that I'm like, oh, that's very obvious what the issue is.
No, that's great. So I need to know, because you got a lot of books out there, I see. You probably have more books at home.
Endless.
What are, I'm not going to give you a number. Just give me a couple of books that you recommend.
What?
Could be
Oh, man.
anything.
Oh,
Business,
man.
it could be.
Oh, man. So, so I guess business is something, it's funny, man, because I was obsessed with bodybuilding when I was in bodybuilding, and I read everything I could, and that was magazines and textbooks and everything I could. And now it seems like I have the same obsession toward business.
Yeah.
So lately it's been a lot of business books. So anyone who wants to build an online business, I couldn't suggest more to read Russell Brunson's books. So it's .com Secrets, Expert Secrets, and Traffic Secrets. Those are just, he literally spells out the entire business for you. He's like, do this, and you will make millions of dollars. If you take action on it, you can't not make millions of dollars. And for people who enjoy online business as well, man, I've got so many great books. Donald Miller has a book called, what's his book? Drawing a blank. Story brand, building a story brand, which is amazing. And I guess it's the idea of when someone comes, whether it be your Instagram page or your website, people are perceiving everything they need to know about you in the first 7 seconds. Yeah. So it's the picture, it's the message, and he calls it the 7-second grunt test. Can I grunt it to you in 7 seconds what I'm all about? And then, like, so you have to get so concise in your wording, and I love that because, like, it's kind of similar to what I'm doing in bodybuilding. It's like I want to be so precise in what I do in the gym, and so concise in what I do in marketing. And I think it's this. I just view it as this never-ending psychology experiment of trying to understand how humans think. Yeah. And like, if I say this, they're going to perceive this, and if I say that, they're going to perceive that. It's just interesting, man. I think it's fascinating. So those would be 2 books I suggest. I mean, endless number of books I could suggest. Anything by Jim Rohn. Jim, R-O-H-N, is certainly still my favorite, and that's probably the first stuff I ever read in my life, which is like 2006. I loved his stuff, and any audio you can get by Jim Rohn is fantastic. I mean, Napoleon Hill's again another legend. I can't go without saying those guys. John Berardi just wrote an amazing book called Changemaker. Did he really? Oh man, it's so good. Yeah. So, like, anyone who's in the fitness, even if you're not in the fitness industry, it's an amazing book. Kind of that's that one of the most recent ones I've read. Yeah. Man, you get depending what topic, man, I could make a list. Anything, right? Yeah.
All right. So I always ask these questions with all my guests, and this one's gonna be good for you. But as far as, because you talked a little bit about it earlier, what is your morning routine look like? What does your daily routine look like?
So this sounds weird, but I always start my day with, I make my bed and then I floss. And why floss? Because most people don't do it. And it's always this idea of like, you got to start your day with the things that are hard. And it's not hard. It's obviously very easy, but it's important. So I prioritize that. So I make my bed, I floss, I brush, I meditate for, today I got a great one, probably almost an hour, probably about an hour this morning. And most days I'll meditate for at least 30 to 40 minutes, and sometimes guided, sometimes not.
What are you doing for meditation, by the way?
Yeah, so sometimes guided, sometimes not. So sometimes I'll do TM, Transcendental. Sometimes I'll do Sam Harris's app. If you know, Sam Harris is amazing. It's called Waking Up. And sometimes I'll just kind of do focusing on centering my body. So this again, it gets a little esoteric, but you start looking at like the energy flowing in and out of your body. So just becoming present in my body first, paying attention to the energy, paying attention to pressure, and paying attention to electricity, and paying attention to tingling and all this, the feelings, the energy in my body. And then I try to center it. So I literally try to control it. And I'm trying to, like, as I breathe in, I'm trying to pull it up my center line. As I exhale, I'm trying to blow it out. And just kind of moving energy in my body. So it just really takes your focus off the outside world and brings it inside of your body. So I think that's what meditation is about. If I can do that for 30 minutes alone, and I can just focus on moving the energy in my body, I can learn to focus on a single point of focus. And that's just this idea of, now if I want to focus on writing a book or creating a video or doing a podcast, it gives me this ability to focus for that amount of time at least. I can this single point of focus is powerful. So that's something I do. And sometimes I'll focus on creating an emotion. So I'll try to embody gratitude, or I'll try to embody joy, or meaning like not just thinking about it, actually feel what it feels like in my body. And just this idea of, you realize you're the creator of your life and your mind and your body, and you can create all of those emotions, and not just a thought, oh, I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for that. Like if you actually, and I'll give you an example and you get this, it's like when your son was born, that feeling you felt, that there's probably nothing else in the world that's like that. Now, if you could bottle that and just pull it up at any moment you wanted, how amazing would that be in your life? How much would that change your life? So that's what I'm attempting to do in meditation, is I'm going, okay, what was a time when I felt complete joy and elation, or a complete happiness, or complete fulfillment? Like, okay, I'll bring that back. And you literally take yourself into that scenario and embody it, so you can feel the emotion. Man, it sounds odd, but sometimes you end up just crying. Sometimes you end up being a big smile on your face. It's just an interesting exploration of this reality that I'm doing my best to not allow the world to create my mind. I want to take my mind to the world, right? So normally you get up in the morning, check your phone, you're outside. Now the world is impacting who you are. The world is impacting the way you think. So I create my mind and take that mind with me. The mind that I've intentionally curated, I take that to the world. That's my attempt, or my focus. And then from there, it's usually a bunch of water and then some type of movement or exercise. So it'll be training, it'll be cardio, it'll be yoga, something like that.
Now, on the flip side to that, I know bringing the joy back into your life by going back into those happy moments. Do you do it on the flip side, like as far as like going back to bad times, maybe callousing your mind a little bit?
Yes, often, to be honest. And especially, I actually try to do that during the day. Like if something bad is going on, I'm going to sit with it. Like if I'm feeling shitty about something, I just see it as an opportunity. I'm like, this is a weak point for me. This is a weakness. So I'm like, how do I sit with this and embrace the anxiety, embrace the fear, or whatever it is? Why am I afraid of this? And how do I immediately take action? So it's this idea of, there's Tony Robbins does this. It's called the Dickens process, where you amplify your deepest fear. So if you could imagine, right now, if I said, what are you most afraid of in life? And you'll think about something like, okay, this. Okay, well now let's fast forward that 2 years, and like you don't do anything about it. Imagine how much bigger it gets. Now let's go 10 years. Imagine just like the worst it could possibly be, whether it be financial or relationships or whatever. Like it's the worst possible case, and like you're just trying to amplify the amount of emotion you feel, and you're creating this like panic in your brain, like, holy shit, I don't ever want that to happen. Because sometimes that's what you need to take action. Like, what's the worst case scenario that could possibly happen in that fear? And you build that up in your mind, and you amplify it and build it and amplify it. And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, I don't ever want that to happen. I need to take action right now.
Yeah.
And that, because most people don't have enough pain to take action.
True. And honestly, I hate to say this, but the people that go through these situations or have gone through these situations usually end up to being the most successful if they can get over that particular
That's it. You're absolutely right. Yeah. The bigger the challenge, the bigger the obstacle, the greater the opportunity for growth, man. And I think intentionally subjecting yourself to those obstacles, like looking for them, like where's my weak spot, like picking something you suck at, right? And maybe that was the reason I stopped bodybuilding, because I was like, I kind of have this shit figured out. Yeah. Like, I think I get it. And even now, why am I taking on business at a deeper level than I'm taking on bodybuilding? Because I don't get it. Like, and I really want to get it. And I'm sure after that, there's going to be something else, right? So it's just this journey of life of finding your drivers, man. And for me, it's like I've always been the type of person, if I suck at something, I'm going to pursue it. And the irony, I've said this often on my podcast, when I was a kid, I was obese, overweight, I had a learning disability and a speech impediment.
Wow.
So now I've obviously been
you're pretty good now.
the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, I learned I didn't really have a speech impediment. I just had tremendous amounts of fear from a very abusive childhood. So anytime I stood in front of an adult, I would shake. Yeah. And I thought that was a stutter. I thought that was a speech impediment. Just shake. And I honestly did that all the way to university. And I didn't even realize, all the way through university. Anytime I would stand with an authority, I would stand there shaking, and I couldn't, it wasn't bad, but it was definitely there.
Do you think, I don't mean to cut you off, do you think that was one of the reasons why you started to build muscle?
100%. Fear. Yeah, so my dad had, again, not to throw him under the bus, I love him and he's a wonderful man now, but he had a very explosive temper. So there'd be times when I come home and the whole house would be turned upside down, and I would be standing there and he'd be screaming at me, and it's just like, fuck. So, and my internalization of it was I was so afraid of him, I didn't want to lash out, react, cry, or anything. I just internalized it and stood there and shook. So anytime I saw an adult, any adult, whether it be a teacher, a parent, anything, I would be very afraid. So that, I'm sure that led me to I'm going to build so much muscle, I'm not going to be afraid of you. And dude, I remember the day when I was big enough that I wasn't afraid of my dad anymore. Yeah. I remember the day. I was probably 18, and he started freaking out on my mom, and I was like, I'm just going to stand right here, and there's nothing you're going to do about it. And that was powerful, right? That's powerful because it allowed me to tell that little 7-year-old, that little 3-year-old boy, like, hey, you're going to be all right. I literally went through that process with neuro-linguistic programming, where I literally went back in my brain and went to that memory that I stored in my brain when I was 3 years old, when I was 7 years old, and everywhere in between and everywhere after, and told myself, like, hey, man, you're going to be all right. You're going to work this out, and you're going to turn out to be okay. Man, there's amazing amounts of relief. Again, whether or not there's actually anything to that, I just told myself, and I can literally feel like the anxiety lifted off my shoulders, because you're going to be strong enough to stand up to this person, and you're never going to have to hurt him, you're never going to hit him, but you're big enough that he's going to back down. Yeah. And again, maybe that's why I did it, because maybe I knew in my heart I didn't want to hit him, and I'm sure if I took up some other MMA, I would have choked him out or something. You still love the guy, you still care for him, you still respect him. I don't want to hurt you, but now I'm capable of it if I want to.
You're just grounded at that point, I think that a lot of times when I started fighting professionally, actually just training in general, I never got into another altercation on the streets ever again.
Right, because you don't have to.
No.
Yeah. I teach that to my son, because my son's 8, and I was like, man, at some point, someone's going to punch you in the face. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to like it. And you're probably going to want to kick his ass, but you're probably not going to be able to. Mm-hmm. So the day you can, the day you know you can, you don't have to punch him back anymore. Or he's not going to punch you, right? Because you're going to know better. And there's so much power, and I think life is this little ultimate struggle for power, right? It's like, I want empowerment. I want to know that I'm strong. I want my kids to know they're strong. And if you know that, if someone comes up to you, no matter how big or how small, you can choke them out or break their arm or whatever, it's a very powerful way to come at the world, especially as a kid. And I got my daughter doing it too, which is, she's such a badass. It's awesome. Actually, they come right in here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they come right in.
That's cool, yeah. Gracie Baja, right?
Yeah.
Gracie Baja, Tampa.
This is, Gracie, South Tampa, I think. Yeah, I don't know if it's Baja.
That's very good. And you are, well, let's finish. What else after that? Oh, sorry about that. We went into a tangent a little bit.
Sorry, what else about?
After meditation?
Oh, training and movement. Yeah, that's it, man. So it'll be, and I alternate now. So people ask, how do I train? And my objectives are very different. I want to be strong. Mm-hmm. So I do quite a bit of heavy stuff. And so one day will be strength and hypertrophy, which isn't usually hypertrophy based, usually strength. So it'll be squats, deadlifts, basic stuff. And then the next day will be a balance of yoga, so mobility and stability work. And sometimes I just do mobility and stability work. But I really like yoga, man. It's really worked for me, because realizing that the biggest limiting factor in building muscle or even performing better is going to be mobility and stability.
I was just going to ask you that too. How much emphasis you put on that?
Huge, man. And then aerobic and anaerobic fitness on that day as well. So the training day is just a training day. So it's basically like sympathetic and parasympathetic day, right? So the sympathetic day is going hard on the weights and volume, and my fooding is up. And the parasympathetic day is kind of recovery day. So the yoga is obviously relaxing, and then most of the time it's low intensity cardio, some high intensity cardio. So kind of trying to balance out the autonomic nervous system. And anyone listening who doesn't get the autonomic nervous system, study it, because I literally take an autonomic view of life. Like everything you do is influenced and controlled by the autonomic nervous system. If you can learn to access it and control it, it's a superpower.
and accessing it through breathing techniques.
Yeah, breath or mindfulness, man. Like I can sit here right now and like, something for the audience to think about, like your body, your muscle tone is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So if I'm sitting here with an elevated, like think of a volume knob and think of, if I turn up the volume knob, the amount of muscle tension that's being created goes up. And that's just increasing that volume of the autonomic nervous system. If I can intentionally go ahead and turn it down, so I'm relaxing all the muscles of your face, of your neck, of your shoulders, of your arms, of your spine. Think of what that does at the level of the muscle. It lets those kind of sarcomeres relax, lengthen out, blood flow changes. There's not as much calcium and magnesium being burned through, and blood flow changes is going to change your body's ability to deliver oxygen to that tissue. So now that tissue is going to have more energy. You're going to be able to produce more energy, and it allows you to stay aerobic rather than being anaerobic. So you're burning through more fat typically than you are more carbohydrate. So when you want the carbohydrate, it's there. It's there. So rather than always sitting in this place of high excitation and high tone, which is what most of us do, I'm really conscious of like turning down the volume knob, man, and that's through the breath, that's through the mind and the body.
Yeah, that's very important, especially for you fighters out there, athletes, being able to turn it on and off.
Yes, and on, and forgetting that our audience is fighters. Like, man, when you're about to go in the ring or you're about to go fight, you want to turn that shit way up. I mean, relative, I guess. Yeah, you don't want to go all the way to the top, but you want to be able to access it. And the true highest, this maybe is an important point for the listener, the true highest level athlete, and we'll say athlete in a general term, but the true highest level athlete can access the highest amount of sympathetic arousal in one single inhalation and the lowest level parasympathetic arousal, parasympathetic stimulation in one single exhalation, right? So it's very fast, like super fast. And that's, so you should be able to get your heart rate up over 100 in one breath in, and then down to 40 on one exhale, right? Like it's boom, it's access. Like think of a fighter, think of a Navy SEAL or someone in the military. Like if you got to go now. It's not like I need 3-4 breaths to get my shit together. Like I want to go now. I got to be able to react, and at the same time, I don't want to stay up there, man. Like once I'm elevated, I got to be able to go, okay, I'm good. I got to calm down and get back to the calm thinking, right? So it's like it's one and one, and learning to train that, I think, is an amazing opportunity that exists for most athletes that very few people are actually paying attention to.
Yeah, that is one thing when you can tell the best fighters and in athletes in general, they can turn it on and turn it off so frequently and so easily.
Yep.
And with all these other aspects going on around them, they're able to hone in on their skill in their game plan. And some of them can't do that. That's right. Like where you separate the elite from the good, from the so.
That's Tyson's quote, right? Everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face, but the really good guy, when he gets punched in the face, knows exactly what to do next, because he goes, okay, I feel you. Now you're gonna get it back three times.
Yeah. I would say my best fights were the ones where I was so in control of my own body and like my mind in general, and then the ones that I lost fights based upon not being in the present moment in a sense.
Sure. And now if you quantify that and you go back to what's actually happening there at the level, you get it, but the audience might not. What's actually happening there? Well, when you say you're kind of not in your mind, you're not focused, oftentimes that's just your brain going offline because it's too much sympathetic arousal. So if you're too sympathetic, your brain goes offline, you go into that amygdala-based response where you're primal and you're trying to just like swing haymakers at everything, rather than going, okay, if I just learn to control my breath here, I can get back onto having my brain being prefrontal cortex oriented. And the best way to quantify that is with CO2, like CO2 tolerance, right? And you know this stuff. So if we can improve our CO2 tolerance and increase your body's ability to tolerate a higher amount of CO2, the higher CO2 tolerance, the less likely your brain is to go offline, right? Your brain stays online no matter how high the sympathetic arousal. Anybody gets punched in the face, especially if you're standing in a room with 50,000 people around, that's huge amounts of sympathetic arousal. You got to train that. You got to train your ability to bring it back down. I got to be calm. Otherwise, your brain's going to go offline, man. You're going to start just throwing haymakers and you're going to get knocked out.
Man, I feel like when I do the CO2 saturation with my fighters, it takes it to another level, and even with the higher level people, like we do maximal breath holds before a competition.
Yeah.
We'll do 5 to 10 max breath holds, and then they'll go and do dynamic warm up, specified warm up, and then there they go. They're out on the fight. But that's very interesting that you put that in place with everything else, and it's something that a lot of people don't understand, in my opinion.
Not enough, but it's the next frontier of performance. And as I said, like just before we started recording, I'm looking for those people who get that stuff and who are willing to push it. Because like right now, we're not pushing the potential of human performance. We're not even close. And there's biochemistry, so we can push substances which aren't illegal but legal. learning how to push certain biochemical pathways, learning how to push the physiology, the autonomic nervous system. Like there's stuff that we're capable of that we have no idea we're capable of yet. And I think it starts with becoming present in your body and learning how to access that high state and that low state at will. Because like if I can turn that up and down, I can control sleep, I can control stress, I can control stress response, I can control energy utilization, whether using fat or carb. You can control so much, and that's the base. Like you got to get there as a base level, and then you can start to go, okay, now I see what I'm capable of when I'm almost like perfectly conditioned. Now let's push performance and see what breaks. Because then you can go, okay, well that broke when I did that. Now this, if I take this substance or this training methodology, I can then push it even further, right? So because you don't know until you push all systems forward. Like like it's all volume knobs are going up, right? Like, okay, we got to push these all up and let's see what happens. And most people can't recover from that because most people would get crushed. So you have to have the ability to access it on and off rather than just on and it stays on. Or that's what we have in sports now, right? Most people are just on, no off switch, or most people just can't turn it on, and then in which case they can't get there.
Yeah, and that plays a huge role in conditioning. And I see a lot of fights, and they're like, "Man, this conditioning is not good," and it's not that; it's they couldn't control their mind.
Yep.
If they were able to spar efficiently and not get tired in the training room, but they gas out in a fight, then that's a mental issue.
Well, yes, but if you think about this, think about what's happening at the level of the autonomic nervous system when I stand in front of 50,000 people. The buzz, man. I can just feel it through my nervous system right now. Your brain just starts going, so your nervous system goes.
You were back there like in a UFC fight right before they come out. It's fucking insane.
It's insane, I bet. So, but think about what's happening at the level of the nervous system. Your nervous system everything's just turned up. So if they don't have the ability to control that, or they didn't train that, like you should, I don't know if you could, but like you literally need to train the ability to, like when I'm out here and there's 50,000 people screaming my name, I got to be calm calm. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to get your brain back online. So one of the best things they could do if they're not is like, hey man, the next time you're going to go out in front of the 50,000 people, the week before or 2 weeks before, as often as you can, go corner man for somebody. Go stand out there and just stand there and just hear the buzz and envision yourself being out there and realizing I got to be able to be here, feel it, and be calm. And then I can control my brain, I can control my breath, right? Ideally, you would train there. I don't know how possible that is, but ideally, you would be able to train with, maybe they can go backstage and train when somebody else is out there fighting, because you can hear it, you can feel it, but now I got to perform, right? So conditioning, the definition of conditioning is not just fitness, right? Fitness is like, okay, aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity. Conditioning is, am I conditioned to the environment? Like, so as an NFL football player, like you got to be conditioned to having 100,000 people watching you play and being calm and being focused. And they get used to that because it's week on week. As a fighter, you're doing it twice a year. So it's challenging, man.
Yeah, I fought in the MLA arena.
Yeah.
2010. And I remember, and that was the first fight too. So there wasn't really any, more like I couldn't go watch another fight, and get used to it. I just remember only staying in the moment of my opponent and what I needed to do from a tactic. But for me, looking forward, I used to stay, like if I was like the main event, if I was like, later on in the card, I would go and watch the fights. Or I would at least go out there and get just a feel of what's going on, which makes total sense.
And if some people can't control it, that could tire them out. Because if you think about it, it's like turning it on. I'm going to go sit out there for 2 hours, but if I can't bring my heart rate back down, if I can't bring it's going to, because you're burning through glycogen. So for some people, that could be the worst thing in the world. Some people, that could be the best thing. So as long as you're aware of being able to control this autonomic nervous system through your breath and through your body, your muscle tone, you can then start to ultimately use that to your advantage. Whereas if the average person who can't breathe properly goes out there, they're going to get out into the fight and they're going to be fucked because their body's burned through all their glycogen stores.
I think just going through it in your mind over and over again too as well, especially throughout camp. It's worse in camp. When you're in preparation, you're like, damn. Yeah. But when you get out there, as long as you have prepared yourself each and every day for 8 to 12 weeks, whatever the camp may be, you get out there, it's just another day in their life.
Yeah, but you're strong mentally, right? Not everyone has the same strength. Some people get out there and their brain starts to go, I didn't do enough, I should have done more, I could have done this, I could have done that. All of a sudden, that's going to throw your nervous system off, right?
I've seen it in real fight time.
Yeah.
Like they had confidence going in the cage, and then all of a sudden they get punched or they get taken down, and then
oh shit, yeah. Again, training that, get back to it. Like bring your breath back, and do a breath hold, right? Accumulate some CO2, bring it back, get them breathe into a bag, do something to accumulate some CO2. And then I'm surprised nobody does that side stage. Like, they're off gassing, trying to get their nervous system back, doing some heavy like mouth open breathing, and then boom, let's bring the CO2 back on.
Not enough information.
Yeah.
I don't believe, or just closed-mindedness. You
Yeah.
know,
Or they haven't seen it work yet. Yeah.
I have. That's the funny thing.
Yeah.
As I wish more people would, take that into account.
Dude, you're the guy, right? Lead the way, man.
Yeah, for
people
sure.
People will follow. If you start to understand, your guy starts to just dominate.
Yeah.
Like, again, eventually everyone will catch up. Then there'll be the next level of something that happens. But for now, man, it gives you an advantage.
For sure, definitely. All right, let's get into these questions. I know these guys are going to get mad if I don't ask you. All right, so for one of my guys, Darren, he asked, "What's the best? Okay, speech. We're gonna get it right. What's the best method for older athletes to shift weight when cutting?" Now I know you don't do cutting, right? But if you were to do it,
so he's cutting for a fight.
Yeah, we'll say cutting for a fight or for a bodybuilding competition, right? And they're older; they're like 40 years old plus. What would trying to get down to a let's say they started at 88 kilos, they're trying to get to 76. Right?
So they got to lose 12 kilos. Yeah. So we're talking over like a couple week period, or like
talking about maybe like a 6 to 8 week period. So diet becomes an issue there. Because I know you've done keto too as well.
Yeah, man, I don't even know if I have an answer. It's got to be different for everybody, right? Yeah. So how well do they partition carbohydrates? So my training approach is, again, whether it's right or wrong, this is often my training approach, is minimum effective dose of carbohydrates. Yeah. So what's the least amount of carbohydrate I can eat and get the greatest amount of performance? So I always have to pay attention to, is my performance dropping even 5%? If it is, then I need to eat more. And how do we ensure that? Well, we ensure that by people not being sympathetic all the time, right? So if we're always sympathetic, we're always anaerobic. So that means my body's always burning through carbohydrate. So I have to keep people, when they're not training, whether it be a fighter or a pro athlete or a bodybuilder, when they're not training, I got to keep you out of that anaerobic energy system. So I got to keep you aerobic. So we got to improve your breathing. We got to improve your CO2 tolerance. So that even if you're eating 125 grams of carbs on your workout, I know that that's fueling the workout, it's fueling the muscles. It's not going to just being utilized because your body's releasing cortisol. So every time you dump cortisol, your body really starts burning carbohydrate. So being super aware of that, like, so my metaphor is always 2 hours a day sympathetic when you're training, the other 22 hours a day is parasympathetic. And if you can get there, then that changes energy systems, that changes how you should eat. So in that scenario, I would be, okay, minimum effective dose of carbohydrates, but you still got to fuel maximum performance, right? I think the worst thing people do as far as nutritionists, and again, probably gonna step on toes, I think, is building a nutrition plan to before you build the training. Like, I need to build a nutrition plan around somebody's training. Like, if I don't know what you're doing every day exactly, like, how the hell do I tell you what to eat? It doesn't make any sense. So my objective as a bodybuilder, as a pro athlete, or as a MMA fighter, is everything that I eat is going into fueling that daily training. I think of it like the Olympic event. It's the gold medal, man. What would you eat if you're getting ready for the gold medal? You got to make sure that every day you're at as primed as you can. That includes sleep, and that includes water, and that includes supplements, that includes food. Like, how do you train as though every day is the gold medal? So that would be a huge influence, all the while eating as little as you possibly can, ultimately, to make sure you're sustaining that performance, right? And again, that would be my advice. Is a lot of athletes aim to eat more. I'm like, man, your target should be dependent on as little as you can, but get the most out of the energy you can. So that'll allow you to drop weight faster, ultimately. But again, just to finish that up, everything's got to be measured, right? Everything's got to be measured. I got to know exactly how much you're taking in at every time of the day, and I want to know what your weight is doing consistently, right? I want to know how much water you're taking in. I want to know how much sodium you're taking in. The more I can measure, because ultimately there's no answer. What there is learning how to make good decisions. So start wherever, like eat what's intuitive to you at 10 or 12 weeks out. And let's figure out where you land. Let's say you're gonna eat 3,000 calories a day, and this is your baseline weight. And I know you're burning this many calories a day. That allows me to be objective with things. If you're burning 300 calories or 3,000 calories a day, or eating 3,000 calories a day, let's say you're burning 3,000 calories a day. If we just say, okay, let's bring down the calories 10%, and let's bring up the training output 10%. We just change one at a time. We don't change both. Yeah. But I think the trick, man, is being as objective as possible. I think people just guess too much, especially at that level, man. If you're trying to be a pro bodybuilder, pro MMA fighter, you just can't guess, because it certainly you could get there, but I don't like to roll the dice, man. I'm like, dude, if I can just make this objective, I know exactly how much you're going in, I know exactly how much is going out. Let's just make manipulations based on performance.
Now, do you calculate what's going out based on, let's say, RPE or something along the lines of that?
It's obviously very subjective, right? It's obviously a best guess, but we can usually tell if you're consistently hitting, a 60-minute workout twice a day and you're doing 15,000 steps a day. We know that eating this number of calories is kind of a good baseline for you. You're not gaining, you're not losing. So based on this amount of work and this amount of calories, you're maintaining. And people should aim to get there at 6 or 8 weeks out, right? Like I can see exactly what's going in, what's going out. And it's subjective how many calories you're burning, but I know this is our baseline. So now if I increase your steps from 15,000 to 17,000, we should by definition see a drop in weight. And if we don't, okay, well maybe let's leave that at 17,000. Let's bring down the calories 10%, right? Or 5%. So you're just making these really small calculated changes. And it doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be thoughtful.
Yeah. Just got to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question I ask all guests, you can think about this one. I know you're going to give me a good one. What is your definition of a strong person? Doesn't have to be physical, obviously. It could be mental, everything else. Take time.
Authenticity, man. I think the word authenticity that comes to mind is the only thing is who I am externally, who I am to the world. I also am behind closed doors. And I think I live my life by that. And I try to let my kids live their life by that is, if I see authenticity and integrity, I guess would be the two words that come to mind. And it's like, who you see on social media is also who you're going to meet in person. And who I am, who you meet here is also who I am with my family. I think that's very important. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be, I'm acting the same way with you as I am with my kids, but it's the same morals, the same values, the same principles. And I think that's important. I think integrity is important. When you say something, you're going to do it. I think that to me is strength, and not just being a yes man, not just saying what you think people need to hear or want to hear. It's just being true to yourself. I think those two words come to mind: authenticity and integrity.
That's great, man. All right, so let's push the stuff. I want MI40 Nation, everything you got, social media. Let them know where they can follow you at.
Yeah, so easiest way, if people like podcasts, listen to yours. Muscle Intelligence Podcast is a good way to do it. I do 2 a week, and I'll do one with a guest, and then I'll do one that's a Q&A, so people can submit questions. We do the Q&As live on my Facebook group, which is a Muscle Intelligence Facebook group. So people can submit questions there, submit questions in advance, or sometimes, usually I'll start the Q&As just with a rant. Like people will throw a topic out there, and I'll just kind of like go off on a tangent for 15 minutes. And when I say rant, some people think that's angry. It's never an angry rant. It's usually just like talking deeply, kind of like we did today, man. We pick a topic and we kind of go on it. That's fun. That's a good place to find me. Muscleintelligence.com is a good place to find me. So there we have workout programs. We have tons of videos. YouTube's another place you can find Muscle Intelligence. And so Muscle Intelligence, is this evolution of just teaching people the most effective ways to build their body in a healthy way. And ultimately, man, using exercise as a means of connecting with yourself. So again, that's kind of maybe a different part of the mission I'd like to throw in there is most people use exercise to disconnect, right? So most people come in, they put their music on as loud as they can, and they just zone out. They turn their brain off. The same way they use drugs, the same way they use alcohol, the same way they use sex. They're trying not to be present with their body, right? So even though exercise is constructive, it's a good thing. Most people use it as a means of disconnecting from themselves. And my suggestion is you do the opposite. My suggestion, you use it as your greatest daily opportunity to connect. So what does that mean? Well, start paying attention to what's happening inside of your body. Start to feel things. Start to feel where your body wants to quit. Start to feel where your mind wants to go, I don't want to do anymore. And why do you want to quit? And it's this daily battleground where I can go, okay, I feel this discomfort, yet I choose to keep going. Okay, I feel that this doesn't feel good. Now, how do I fix it? It's just learning how to start paying attention to what's happening inside of your body, right? So rather than being focused on the outside world where I'm just, lifting this weight and I'm gritting my teeth and moving it, I'm taking the focus from the outside to the inside, and I'm going, okay, what muscle am I trying to train? Is this muscle actually the thing doing work? How can I make it work harder? So again, contextually, it's challenge rather than completion. So my objective in bodybuilding and muscle building is I want to challenge a muscle. I don't give a shit if I finish 3 sets of 8. That's not the goal. Yeah. The goal for me is I want to challenge this muscle as much as I possibly can. That's a very contextually different thing for most people. So it's a lot of what we teach is about that. It's teaching you to take the focus from the outside, which is the sets and the reps and the volume and the load and moving weights and exercises, to what's happening inside. And I think the greatest opportunity that exists there is exercise becomes meditative. It becomes a thing where you're like, man, I feel so much better when I'm done this. I feel like I'm connected with myself. I feel like I'm present, and I leave here and I take this amazing energy and this amazing focus to the world, rather than feeling like you're anxious and maybe angry. This idea of neuro-associative conditioning, right? So if I come to the gym and I'm training hard and I have to get angry at myself or angry at somebody, Well, that now becomes your default thought process every time you come in the gym, because you're anchoring those two things together. And then you can take that anger out to the world. It's not a good, I mean, in most cases, it's not what we want to do, right? I think we want to learn how to use exercise. Maybe in some cases you don't, but to ultimately train our brain to be comfortable being uncomfortable, to be disciplined, to go toward obstacles, to go toward challenges rather than avoid them. So most people come to the gym, they do the same shit over and over again, the stuff they're good at. They never go to things they're bad at. Well, man, all those opportunities exist in a workout. Like, hey, I'm really bad at this. Good, go do it. Hey, this doesn't really feel really good. Good, learn how to get better at it, right? Rather than saying, oh, I'm just not going to do things I'm good at. That's not growth, right? That's not mental or physical growth.
No, that's perfect, man. All right, well, you guys know where to find me at Daru Strong, Instagram, my website, darustrong.com. I'm going to probably go ahead and get a workout in. Ben, you want to take me through some stuff?
Absolutely, man. Let's do it.
Ooh, let's go.
It's a pleasure, man.